Zane Fuller squatted behind a half-collapsed wall of what used to be an alien hydroponics lab, squinting through his cracked visor at the sprawled figure ahead. The alien, pale-skinned, long-limbed, and gasping, lay face down in a tangle of vines that had grown wild since the outbreak. The air stank of ammonia and rot. Zane tapped the side of his helmet, muttering into the comm unit. "Still alive," he said. "Barely." A static hiss answered from his shoulder mic. No words. The signal back to the outpost was failing again. He stood slowly, his knees stiff from hours in the field, and approached the alien. Its skin shimmered faintly, a sickly hue that had become disturbingly familiar. Zane knelt, pressing two gloved fingers to the alien's neck. There was a pulse, thready but there. The alien's eyes fluttered open. "Help," it rasped. Zane couldn't pronounce its name, only knew it started with a vowel and ended in a whistle. "You're infected," he said. "I can't carry you back." The alien blinked sluggishly. "Garden." Zane looked around. The garden was a mess, overgrown, unkempt, wild, with alien flora that had once been carefully cultivated. The virus had swept through the colony in less than 3 weeks, dropping the caretakers one by one. The few survivors, like this one, were barely coherent. "You think the cure's here?" Zane asked. The alien's hand twitched toward a cluster of purple-veined stalks coiling up a shattered support beam. Zane rose and stepped toward the plants. He didn't touch them, not yet. He'd seen what happened when humans came into contact with alien pathogens unprotected. His predecessor, Dreyer, had coughed himself to death in a matter of hours after brushing against one of the wrong vines. Zane activated the scanner clipped to his belt. It whirred and blinked, the display flooding with unreadable alien chemical data. The colony's translator AI had gone offline with the last blackout, and he wasn't about to guess based on color and smell. "Not helpful," he muttered. He turned back to the alien. "You're going to have to show me exactly which one." The alien tried to sit up and failed. Its limbs trembled violently. Zane sighed, walked back, and crouched beside it. "All right, I'll carry you. But you better not puke in my suit." He pulled the alien upright with effort, slinging one spindly arm over his shoulder. It was lighter than it looked, bones like hollow tubes, but the awkward shape made walking difficult. They moved 10 feet, then 20. The alien pointed weakly at a mound of tangled green and silver leaves. "There," Zane asked. A nod. He lowered the alien against an intact bit of wall and approached the plant. It looked like a fern had exploded into a starburst of thick, metallic fronds. He scanned it. The device beeped twice, then shut down completely. "That's great," he muttered. "Perfect timing." He took out a sample vial, snapped off a leaf, and sealed it. If this was going to work, he'd need to test it somehow, but the base was nearly abandoned. The last medical officer had collapsed during a status check 4 days ago. Zane looked down at the alien. Its breathing was shallow. "If this doesn't work, I hope you don't haunt me." He made it back to the outpost 2 hours later, dragging the alien on a makeshift sled cobbled together from broken drone parts. The heat inside the dome was oppressive, with the climate regulators running on emergency power. He passed empty bunks and sealed rooms, the kind of quiet that made the skin crawl. Inside the infirmary, he laid the alien on a cot and dropped the sample on the lab table. He peeled off his gloves and washed his hands 3 times with the remaining sterilizer. "You better not be poisonous," he muttered to the leaf. The next 12 hours were spent cross-referencing old logs, archived plant data, and handwritten notes from the previous xenobotanist. The leaf, it turned out, matched a specimen cataloged only once marked as low toxicity with possible immunostimulant properties. Zane brewed a mild decoction in the lab's sterilizer kettle. The smell was sharp and earthy. He poured a small amount into a cup and brought it to the alien. "This is either going to help you or kill you faster," he said. "Drink." The alien sipped. Nothing happened. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Zane leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Any changes?" he asked. The alien blinked. "Breathing. Easier." Zane raised an eyebrow. "No kidding." He ran a quick vitals check. The oxygen saturation had ticked up slightly. Pulse had stabilized. "All right, we're not dead yet." He brewed another cup, stronger this time. The alien drank it all, then promptly fell asleep. Zane didn't sleep. He spent the night cataloging every plant in that garden, mapping their locations, cross-referencing again and again until he found 3 more with similar properties. He marked them with flag tape and spent the next day harvesting carefully. By the 3rd day, the alien could sit up. "Name," it said, Zane Fuller. It attempted a nod. "Mine, Eetl, sure, I'll go with that." Eetl tapped its chest, then pointed to the cup. "You found cure. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. You're alive, that's all I know." Zane got the idea to test the brew on another infected alien. There were 6 still in isolation. He picked the one with the least severe symptoms and administered the same tea. 12 hours later, that alien was conscious and asking for food. Zane didn't celebrate. Not yet. He brewed more of the decoction, refined it with the help of the lab equipment, and repeated the process 3 more times. Same results: stabilization, recovery. It was working. By the end of the week, he'd treated all 6 patients and started on the next group. Word spread. Survivors trickled out of hiding. Eetl remained by his side, helping identify plants, translating what little he could recall from the xenobotanical logs. The garden became a sanctuary. Zane cleared paths, marked safe zones, and cordoned off dangerous growths. He rigged lights using scavenged solar panels and set up a crude irrigation system. Then he got careless. While trimming a vine that had crept across the path, he slipped on wet algae and fell hard. Pain shot through his right leg. He sat up, sweat beading on his forehead. Son of a, he tried to stand. His leg buckled. He crawled back to the outpost. Eetl found him halfway there. "Broken?" it asked. "I don't know," Zane hissed. "Feels like it." They got him to the infirmary. Zane ran the scanner over his leg. Fracture mid-tibia. No displacement, but definitely broken. Great. 6 weeks at minimum. Eetl said nothing, just handed him a splint and helped secure it. Zane spent the first 3 days in bed, leg elevated, barely able to move. Eetl brought him food, mostly broth and strange grain cakes. The rest of the aliens kept the garden running. Word reached another outpost. A handful of humans arrived: doctors, technicians, volunteers. One of them knocked on his door on the 5th day. "Zane Fuller?" "Yeah," the woman stepped in. Tall, curly brown hair, sharp green eyes. "I'm Dr. Julia Marvin. I read your reports." Zane blinked. "Didn't know I sent any." "You didn't." Eetl did. Zane looked at the alien, who shrugged. Julia set down a datapad. "You figured out a cure from a neglected alien garden with no translator, no backup, and a broken scanner." "That right. I had help." She sat beside him. "You've got half the science division fighting over who gets to write the paper." Zane winced as he shifted. "I don't care about the paper, I just want these people to live." She studied him for a moment. "You're lucky, clean fracture. Should heal fine if you stay off it." Zane gestured to his leg. "That's the plan." The next 2 weeks passed slowly. Julia ran proper tests on the plants, confirming their immune-boosting properties. With her help, they refined the decoction into capsules. Distribution began immediately. By the time Zane could walk with crutches, 80% of the colony had recovered. Eetl met him at the garden gate. "You saved us." Zane shook his head. "We did this together." Eetl nodded. "Still, you saw what we couldn't. In our own soil." Zane looked around at the trimmed paths, the healing plants, and the aliens working beside humans. "Sometimes the answer's already growing. You just have to stop and look." He limped forward, sunlight filtering through the canopy above. The garden was alive again. So were they all. Zane blinked against the pale morning light filtering through the greenhouse dome. The air smelled of baked soil and something citrusy, likely from the new batch of flowering stalks that had budded overnight. He shifted carefully, testing how much weight his splinted leg could handle. Minimal, enough to hobble, not enough to pretend he wasn't still recovering. Julia crouched near one of the irrigation lines, tightening a valve with a grunt. "You'd think with all the money they poured into this place, we'd get tubing that doesn't leak every 3rd day." Zane leaned on his crutch. "They probably spent it all on the automated food dispensers that play elevator music." A guttural trill behind them signaled Eetl's arrival. It carried a shallow basin filled with crushed stem pulp and set it on the workbench. Its movements had grown steadier over the past week, though the occasional tremor still fluttered in its fingers. "We tested this one yet?" Zane asked, nodding at the mush. "Uncatalogued," Eetl said. "New growth." Didn't exist before the blight. Julia straightened and wiped her hands on her pant leg. Fascinating. Adaptive flora might be a byproduct of the pathogen burning through the ecosystem. Zane raised a brow. Or the plants just decided to get weird. Weird is good, Julia said. Weird means new compounds. Eetl dipped a finger into the pulp, then pressed it to a strip of treated cloth that changed color almost instantly. A deep amber stain spread from the point of contact. Julia whistled low. Reactive, that's promising. No known match on the chemical logs, none, Eetl replied. We've begun mapping its spread, mostly along the east-facing quadrant, grows only in shaded pockets. Which makes it a pain to harvest, Zane muttered. Eetl tilted its head. You do not harvest, not yet. It may alter if removed too soon, Julia nodded. We'll monitor, set up time-lapse cams, maybe run a few soil assays. As Eetl moved to log the data, Zane motioned Julia aside. Have you noticed anything? Off with the plants, I mean, she crossed her arms. You mean besides the fact they're exhibiting traits we've never seen and may have spontaneously mutated in response to a cross-species viral collapse? Yeah, besides that. She glanced back at the garden. Some of them are shifting growth patterns. It's subtle, but the phototropism's inconsistent. I had a vine grow away from the light source yesterday. That's what I thought. One of the big leaf runners doubled back toward the compost bin. I swear it was reaching. Julia's eyes narrowed. Let's keep that quiet for now. No need to freak out the rest of the team. They're already freaked out. One of the translators asked if the plants were watching yesterday. He's not wrong to wonder. They both turned as one of the younger aliens staggered into the dome, supported by another. The sick one's breathing was shallow, eyes sunken, skin dull. It collapsed near the basin. Zane grabbed a scanner from the bench and ran it over the alien's chest, blood oxygens dropping. Lower than I've seen. Julia was already prepping a dose of the decoction, but Eetl raised a hand. No. Not the standard formula. This one has a different reaction. Zane frowned. How do you know? It was born near the northern cliffs. The strain from their worsened symptoms. Julia hesitated, syringe in hand. Then what do we give it? Eetl turned to the basin of pulp. This, Zane looked between them. We don't even know what that stuff does yet. We know it reacts, Eetl said, and that this one is dying, so choose. Julia tapped the syringe against the table. We can't test on a living subject without at least a biochemical baseline. Zane crouched beside the alien, who clutched at his sleeve with surprising strength. Its eyes, though rimmed with fever, were lucid. It knows, Zane said. It's choosing. Julia exhaled through her nose. All right. We'll dilute it, half strength. No more. Eetl prepared the dose with practiced hands. Zane supported the alien's head while Julia administered it through a soft-tipped applicator. The alien swallowed weakly, then shivered. They waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The alien's breathing slowed, not in a collapse, but in a settling. Its chest rose with rhythm. Color returned, faint but measurable. Zane checked the scanner. Oxygen up by 5 points, Julia blinked. That's fast. Eetl watched in silence, hands folded. The alien opened its eyes. Craving? Salt, it whispered. Zane laughed, almost startled. We'll see what we can do. Julia began typing notes frantically. This changes our whole approach. We need to isolate that compound, see what it's targeting. Could be a secondary vector we missed. Zane stood slowly, favoring his good leg. If that pulp really is reactive and it's specific to a geographic subset of the aliens, we might be looking at a regional mutation. Or tailored immunity, Julia said, which means we're not dealing with one virus. We're dealing with variants. Eetl tapped the side of the basin. The plants adapt, so must we. They spent the rest of the day recording reaction rates, charting leaf colorations, and comparing growth rates against environmental variables. Eetl directed 2 others to collect samples from the shaded quadrant, cautioning them to avoid direct skin contact. Julia constructed a makeshift humidity chamber using a broken food crate and the last of the vapor sealant patches. By dusk, 3 more aliens had arrived showing symptoms. 2 from the same region as the earlier patient, 1 from a coastal zone. Zane noticed a pattern in their symptoms: shallow respiration, but no fever, different from the earlier cases. He called Julia over. You see this, she nodded. Coastal strain. Variant B, maybe. If we're lucky, it'll respond to the new compound. Eetl approached, holding a cluster of dark blue stems. This grows near the coast, may be useful. Julia took a sample. We'll run a comparative. If it works, we're going to need to rethink the entire treatment protocol. Zane sat on a crate, leg throbbing. So we're not curing the virus, we're curating an ecosystem that fights it for us. Eetl tilted its head. You say this like it is strange, Zane gestured to the garden. It's just wild, you know. We came here thinking we'd bring order. Turns out we're passengers, Julia smirked. Passengers with lab coats and duct tape. A chime sounded from the comm panel near the dome entrance. Julia checked it and frowned. Message from the orbital relay. They're sending a team. Medical mostly, and a few Envira specialists. Zane rubbed his face. Great, more people to argue with. They'll want data, trials, peer review. Let him bring their clipboards. We've got sap and roots. Eetl sat beside him. They will not understand, not at first. No, Zane said. But they will when they see it breathe. The stars blinked on overhead as the dome's lights dimmed to simulate twilight. The plants swayed ever so slightly, though there was no wind. Julia packed up the day's samples into the cooler unit. I'll run extra assays tonight. If we can isolate even a single protein marker, we might be able to synthesize a more stable form. Zane nodded. You take first shift. I'll monitor the coastal patient. Don't push the leg. I'm sitting. Mostly. She left with the cooler and Eetl lingered, folding a thermal blanket over the sleeping alien beside them. You don't sleep much, do you? Zane asked. Eetl's gaze flicked toward the canopy. Not since the sky turned red. Zane didn't ask what that meant. Some things weren't meant to be translated. Instead, he leaned back, watching the faint glow of the plants shimmer as the darkness deepened. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of water trickling through the irrigation line echoed faintly, like a lullaby whispered by leaves. He closed his eyes just for a moment, and dreamed of roots that remembered. Zane's crutch thudded against the greenhouse's stone-tiled floor, echoing faintly beneath the dome as he made his way to the back corner, where the coastal patient lay curled on a thermal mat. The alien's skin had taken on a faint teal sheen, more luminous than before. A small container with the second decoction formula rested beside it, half empty. Still breathing calmly, Zane muttered. That's something. Behind him, water hissed through a narrow pipe and dripped into a collection basin. The irrigation system had finally stopped leaking, thanks to Julia's endless tinkering and a surprising amount of algae paste. He leaned against the wall, adjusting weight off his healing leg. The ache had mellowed into a dull reminder, tolerable if not ignored too long. From across the garden, Eetl approached with a long, flat leaf folded neatly in its hands. New growth under the shade tunnels, it said, offering the sample. Unusual texture, slightly oily. Zane sniffed it. Smells like burnt cinnamon. Not familiar with that, Eetl replied, but the insects won't touch it. Zane examined the veins in the leaf under a portable light. They shimmered faintly, an iridescence that hadn't shown up in any of the earlier samples. You think this one's medicinal? Unclear, but it only grows near decomposing roots. Julia entered through the airlock corridor, brushing pollen off her sleeves. I just ran protein binding tests on yesterday's stem compound. It's targeting something viral, but not the virus itself. Zane looked up. Then what? It's binding to the cellular debris left behind the stuff your immune system usually has to clear out over time. It's speeding up cleanup. Less inflammation, faster recovery. Eetl tilted its head. So the body heals itself, but faster. Exactly, Julia said. It's like giving the immune system a clean workspace. Zane tapped the folded leaf against his palm. So what if this one's doing something similar, but with environmental cleanup instead of internal? Julia furrowed her brow. You think it's detoxifying the soil? Eetl answered first. Possibly. We saw less fungal spread near the clusters. Zane limped toward the back counter and pulled down a shallow tray, filling it with soil from two locations, one from near the new leaf, one from a random patch. If it kills mold, we'll know by tomorrow. Julia set down her satchel and pulled out several sample vials. The compound from the north quadrant is showing signs of enzymatic decay after 72 hours. It might lose potency if not processed immediately. So we're back to harvesting fresh on demand, Zane said. Not ideal. Eetl unfolded a small cloth packet and revealed a series of dried roots. These were left in the sun. Still potent after 4 days. Julia took one and crushed it between her fingers. Stable in dry form, that's promising. Zane leaned on the bench. What if we build a drying rack? Controlled exposure, no direct sunlight, could give us a buffer. Eetl nodded. I will construct one. As it turned and walked off, Julia lowered her voice. We need to talk about the visitors, Zane sighed. What now? They're sending a transport ship tomorrow. No one asked us. Of course not. They want samples. Live plants too. And they're bringing containment crates. Zane stared at the corner where the coastal alien now slept. They're going to try to take it apart, aren't they? They'll say it's for study, but you know how this goes. He pushed himself upright. We're not shipping out anything alive. Not until we know what taking it away does. Julia folded her arms. I already said that in the response. They didn't like it. Zane looked around the dome. The foliage had grown dense but not uncontrolled. Pathways had been rewoven with local reed fiber. Hanging pods filtered air naturally. The garden wasn't just alive, it was cooperating. If we move any of it off-world, it'll stop behaving like this. They won't listen to that. They'll want proof. Then we give them proof. By midday, the drying racks were complete woven reed platforms suspended over reflective panels that concentrated heat without direct sun contact. Eetl monitored moisture loss with a strip of reactive moss tied to the corner of each rack. The process worked faster than expected. Zane spent the afternoon reviewing vital logs. Of the recovered aliens, only one had shown residual symptoms, and those had faded after a second dose of the coastal decoction. The rest showed stable vitals and resumed metabolic rates. Julia ran a field test using the dried compound, preparing identical doses to the active brew and administering them to 2 volunteers. Both responded within the hour, no drop in efficacy. All right, Zane said. That's stable formulation, we can store it. Keep it small batch, Julia reminded. We're not a factory. Eetl returned carrying a bundle of dark seeds. We found these near the northern trail. They were buried beneath old growth. Zane took one and sliced it open. The interior was blue-green, glossy, with a faint odor like stone fruit. Julia scanned it. High lipid content. Might be a natural binder. For pills, Zane asked. For salves. Or suspensions. If we can emulsify the decoction with this, it'll survive longer in variable temperatures. Eetl pulled a small grinding bowl from its satchel. We can prepare some now. Zane watched as they ground the seeds into a paste. Its texture turned creamy under pressure, and when mixed with a drop of the decoction, the color shifted to a deep gray. Looks like clay, he said. Julia dabbed a bit onto a test strip. Stable. Let's try it on the patient with lingering symptoms. Zane nodded. I'll go. He hobbled across the dome and knelt beside the alien with the residual cough. It blinked at him, eyes clear but tired. Just a bit on the skin, he said. Let's see if this does anything. He applied a thin layer of the mixture to the alien's forearm. The skin absorbed it quickly, leaving no residue. Comfortable, he asked. The alien gave a faint hum. Zane returned to the others. Now we wait. 5 hours later, the cough was gone. Julia double-checked the vitals. No inflammation, no respiratory lag. That's a full recovery. Zane exhaled slowly. Then we've got 3 treatment forms, brew, dry capsule, and topical paste. Eetl placed a marker stone beside the main path, each from a different plant. Each suited to a different strain. Julia looked toward the dome entrance. They'll arrive in the morning. We'll show them the data, Zane said. And the process, they can take notes, but nothing leaves. Eetl turned, gaze steady. If they try, Zane didn't answer immediately. Then they won't get very far. These plants don't grow for just anyone. When the transport team arrived at dawn, Eetl met them at the gate, flanked by 2 recovered colony members. Zane sat just inside the dome entrance, leg elevated, datapads stacked beside him. The lead human wore a sterilized suit and carried a containment case. We're under directive to collect live samples for study. Zane handed over a packet. Here's what we've developed. Treatment logs, botanical growth data, compound breakdowns, it's all there. The woman flipped through it. We were told there was a cure. There is, 3 actually, but they only work when harvested and processed here in this environment, she frowned. That doesn't make sense. Julia stepped forward. The plants respond to the ecosystem. Take them out of it, they stop producing the compounds. We've tested, and you expect us to take your word. No, Zane said. You can run your own trials. We've included the protocols. Just don't take the plants. The woman stared at him, then at the garden beyond. This isn't standard procedure. Neither was surviving this long, he said. After a long pause, she nodded. We'll take the data. No samples. When the transport lifted off 2 hours later, the garden was quiet again. Zane sat beneath one of the arching vines, sipping tea brewed from the original decoction. Eetl joined him, folding long legs beneath its frame. Will they return? Probably, with more forms, more questions. Eetl tapped the soil beside them. We'll have more answers. Julia approached, carrying a tray of seedlings. We're starting a new quadrant, east side. We'll crossbreed the north and coastal strains. Zane raised his cup. To adaptive flora. And stubborn humans, Julia added. Eetl hummed in agreement. Together they survive. Zane leaned back, watching the leaves shift in the filtered light. For the first time in weeks, the air felt still. Not lifeless, but whole, no alarms, no crises. Just breathe and earth, and the quiet rhythm of things growing.